It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to U of L Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. So glad you're joining us today. Over the next half hour, as always, we'll have stories and interviews with people who are doing great research at the University of Louisville and also some students, those kinds of things. So hopefully you'll listen in for the next 30 minutes and learn a little bit about the University of Louisville and all the good things going on at U of L. So coming up on this show, you'll meet a remarkable U of L student who decided she needed to be more healthy and lost more than 100 pounds during her time at U of L. But that's just part of Shelby Fisk's college career, and she will tell you about it. And the Hite Art Institute has a new director. You'll meet Chris Reitz and hear what exhibits and programming he has in store for the Hite Art Institute at U of L. But first up, Lolly McCubbin is a professor in counseling psychology in U of L's College of Education and Human Development. Her research focuses on resilience, adaptation, and well-being, particularly in families of color and indigenous groups. Welcome, Lolly.
Thank you. Welcome.
So what does all that mean? Your research focuses on resilience, adaptation, and well-being. I got that off your webpage.
Yeah. Did your homework.
I did.
I look actually at resilience and how families and individuals overcome adversity. And with that adversity, how do you adapt from having childhood trauma, and how do you adapt over time and still promote well-being, whether that be physical, spiritual, psychological well-being?
So how tough you are? Is that
how healthy? How healthy are we?
How healthy you are?
Yeah.
And how about how tough you are? Is that a toughness thing? If you're resilient, does that mean you're really tough?
Oh, great question. Actually, it's interesting. I think that's kind of the idea is resilience is to be tough, this kind of individualistic kind of ruggedness. And actually with our research, we actually found resilience is really more about relationships. It can be relationships with yourself, your relationship with your spirituality or God, your relationship with your family, as well as your relationship with your surroundings, your relationship with land and your community.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You are in the College of Education and Human Development, but you've been in Hawaii, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yes. I was a military kid, but I'm actually indigenous to I'm Native Hawaiian, Japanese, and European American. So my family is actually from Oahu, from the state of Hawaii.
Sounds like your family's from all over the place.
Yes, I've lived all over. So
okay.
Yes. Yep.
So you. Did you grow up in Hawaii then?
I grew up all over. I lived a part in Hawaii. I also lived in California, Minnesota, Wisconsin, to abroad, England, Italy, and Central America, Costa Rica. So all over.
Been all over the world. But you've done some research on Hawaiian people, correct?
Yes.
So tell us about that research.
Yes. So I'm actually Native Hawaiian, and what that means is actually it's the indigenous or Aboriginal people prior to Western contact. So Western contact happened around in the late 1700s. So I'm a descendant of the indigenous people of Hawaii. Okay. And so my research actually focuses looking at Hawaii because we have a really unique ethnic mix in the state of Hawaii. So it's a really nice group of looking at different ethnic and racial groups and how do they interact together and how do they create a sense of a local culture while also maintaining their own indigenous roots or their own home culture.
So what did you find with your research?
Interestingly enough, we found some interesting pieces. We tend to look at resilience like this idea of grit or a toughness. And interesting, we found for people of color and for those from Asian Pacific Islander, as well as it's been replicated in African Americans and other Native American groups, is resilience is really part of what we call the social ecology. And what we really focused on was the idea of relationships. And so what we found, interestingly enough, that looking at mental and physical health was related to what we call relational well-being. And that really means to look at, in a Hawaiian terms, as we call it lokahi. And it's the idea of balance or harmony. And lokahi makes up your relationship with your aina, your land, the ocean, the land you live off, your spiritual, which can be your ancestors or Christianity or Buddhism, as well as your relationship with humankind and your family.
So a person who is a fifth-generation Native Hawaiian, is that person any different than me, who was born in America and, you know, my relatives go way back in America?
I think it's different because with the Native Hawaiians and knowing our history, one of the things is that I think in the continental U.S., we tend to look at it as the future-driven. And so as a Hawaiian, I was always taught that to know your future is to know your past. If you look at how a fish swims in the ocean, how they direct themselves is not by their eyesight. It's not by looking forward. It's actually by their tail. And so one of the things as a Native Hawaiian is I must look to my past to know how to move forward. And one of the things that's a little bit different for Native Hawaiians that people may not know is we are our own racial group. And actually, with Western contact, prior to Western contact, we were a thriving community. And we actually even had our own monarchy, our own parliamentary system. We are a sovereign nation. We had international treaties. And when Western contact happened and we were, quote, discovered, unquote, by Western contact, within 100 years, 90% of the Native Hawaiian population died.
Wow.
And so we're looking at the cultural genocide. And there's been a lot of research on looking at intergenerational trauma, even at the genetic level, and how we carry on that historical trauma. Okay. And so it's part of our story. And one of the things that people tend to think of, well, that's 100 years ago. How does that affect today? And so for me and my family, my father is the first Native Hawaiian to live past the age of 45.
Really? Why?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Part of it is because of the tourism industry and military. We were a land-based agricultural and fish diet primarily, and when tourism came and military came, more packaged foods came, took the land, so we couldn't live off the land. So the diet changed, but our metabolism, our diet, and the way we were genetically made up, it was very different.
So the bodies of Native Hawaiians didn't adjust to what was coming in?
What was coming in? So the indigenous plants, we can't live off the land now. And so there is a warrior diet that goes back to our indigenous roots that has been proven, but a lot of things that similar to many communities of color, face diabetes, obesity, heart disease, a lot of those factors, also depression, anxiety, and some say despair.
Okay. We're talking with Lale McCubbin, who is a professor in the College of Education and Human Development at UofL. She's a counseling psychologist and does some research on indigenous people. What have you found in terms of do indigenous, that's a tough name, a tough word to say sometimes. Yeah. Indigenous folks, they're Native Americans, Hawaiians, others, do they have more resilience for whatever reason than I do as a white Caucasian American?
Great question. What we actually have found is, this is related to Ann Maston's work at University of Minnesota, is we call resilience the idea of ordinary magic.
The idea of ordinary
magic. And what that means, we all have processes of resilience. It just depends, similar to Michael Unger's work, is the idea of what is our social ecology, what is around us that we can pull from to be resilient. So there are some universal commonalities about resilience that you and I can share. And there are also some things that we call cultural specific. And that from even a European American perspective, you even have your ethnic roots. And so you may have passed on certain German or English or traditions you don't even know that are part of your narrative or your story in your family and how you live your life.
But isn't a lot of this individualized, like how you grow up individually? If I grow up in a really tough neighborhood, I'm going to have a heck of a lot more resilience than if I grow up in suburbia in a nice house. Those kinds of things, right?
Well, it depends, because I think there's what's interesting is we were talking about hidden resilience, and what we found is actually a lot of kids that come from upper class suburbia or wealthy neighborhoods are actually also at risk. So for substance abuse, for domestic violence, for all of those things. And so yes, in some ways it could be determined that those in, say, inner cities are better at navigating the systems in terms of building resilience, how to navigate that, whereas in suburbia there may be this kind of isolation. And they may have to focus more on individual. But one of the things that we're finding with resilience and even adversity is adversity goes across class. And so with that being said, though, my adversity or somebody that, say, a person lives in West Louisville, their adversity may be different. How they conceptualize that adversity and how they conceptualize resilience may be very much context dependent. So it's really important to not say, well, I'm resilient in my suburbia way, so this is the suitcase, so I'll travel to West Louisville and tell you this is how you be resilient. It's really important to understand that child or that family or adult's context.
Well, good luck with the rest of your research. Where are you going next? Who are you going to study next?
What we're trying to do is we're actually following up on a longitudinal study. We looked at resilience from prenatal all the way to now where they're in their 60s, those that were born in 1955 to Kauai. And so we're looking actually at age 60 when we see the obesity, the diabetes, and the heart disease. So we're really looking at what's the relationship between trauma, resilience, and these health disparities that we see.
So you're extending the research of the Hawaiian people, basically.
Yes. Canada and Asians and
Okay.
Pacific Islanders. Yes.
Gotcha. Very good. All right, Lolly McCubbin, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. With me now is a recent graduate from the University of Louisville. Her name is Shelby Fisk, and she's got quite the story to tell of her college career. So, Shelby, welcome first off to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Glad you're here. So I got to set this up a little bit. I get this email from a friend of mine who works at UofL named John Smith, commonly known as Smitty. He says that I've got this awesome student who did some pretty cool stuff while she was in college, and she'd be great for your radio show. So that's how you got stuck on the radio show. That's why I called you up. Is that okay?
That's perfectly fine.
So you can blame John Smith,
I will.
a staff member at UofL. All right. Well, Shelby, you are from Louisville, right? Where'd you go to high school?
Atherton.
And how'd you wind up at UofL?
I am a Cardinal Covenant student, so I got a pretty great scholarship to come here. So it was, I got a scholarship, and then they set me up with work study, which is how I met John.
Okay. And tell people what Cardinal Covenant is. What is that?
It's a need-based scholarship program, and so they paid for all of my college. And you have to meet like a certain GPA and certain ACT score, and then I think now the requirements, you have to like write a letter, and there's certain things to get into the program, but it's probably one of the best at U of L, in my personal opinion.
So could you have afforded to go to college if you didn't have the Cardinal Covenant?
Absolutely not. I have an older brother and an older sister who both went through the program, so I'm the third one.
They got in the Cardinal Covenant program?
And we all three have graduated from University of Louisville.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So you got a good family history with the University of Louisville then, don't you?
Yep, go Cards.
All right. What's your degree in?
I'm a communication major.
Okay. So what are you going to do with that degree?
I am currently working at Milestone Wellness Center. I'm a sales rep, membership rep, and talking about health and wellness, which I'm very excited about.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the point of why Smitty sent me the email about you. He said, you won't believe what she did in terms of wellness while she was a student at U of L. So why don't you kind of tell that story?
Okay. So my junior year, my sophomore year, I broke my ankle and got a plate and 17 screws put in it. And then a year later, I had the opportunity to go to Croatia with the ISLP program, which is International Service Learning Program, through the communication department at U of L. And so I had this trip that I really wanted to go on, but I was significantly overweight. I was obese, basically. And so over the past 2 years, I've lost 110 pounds. The SRC was a pretty big deal to me when it got put in because it kind of made exercise, well, not fun, but it was pretty to look at.
And the SRC is the Student Recreation Center, which has been here, I think, 3 years at the University of Louisville. Brand new, beautiful facility. So you were spending a lot of time at the Student Rec Center, weren't you?
Yes. It made exercising fun, we'll say. And then along with, my exercise program that I put in place, I slowly changed my relationship with food, and before I left for Europe, I'd lost 30 pounds. And I not only did I go to Croatia, but I went to Turkey and Germany with U of L, and then from there I broke off with 2 other girls and hit Greece, Italy, Spain, France, and the Netherlands all in 32 days. So that was probably...
So you backpacked across most of Europe.
Yeah, pretty
basically.
much in 32 days with 2 other girls. Yeah, it was crazy time in my life. But I came back and, over the past, I guess, the first 6 months of my journey, I had developed, these new habits, this new lifestyle. And so when I came back, it was like, should I stop here or should I keep going? And I chose to keep going. And through social media has really helped me keep log of my journey, and I've got a lot of support on there. And 2 months ago, I posted a video on Facebook, and it went viral with 43,000 views. And then
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, they asked me to be on the news. So.
Yeah, so there you go. How did you come to this? I mean, was it just the trip that you wanted to go on and you realized at the weight you were at, you just weren't going to be able to hike and you weren't going to be able to carry a backpack and make that trip? Was that what sparked you to go to the healthier lifestyle?
I was 20 years old and I couldn't stand for more than an hour without being in pain. So that was
So you knew you had to make a change.
Yeah. And my mom also as much as as much as you love your parents and they want to support you the best they can, she sat down with me one day and she's like, look, if you continue down this road, I'm not saying right now, but if you continue down the road you're going in this direction, you will have to consider gastric bypass surgery. And so I cried, not because what she said hurt my feelings, but because it was the truth. And like, not only was I unhappy with myself, I was unhappy with a lot of aspects of my life. And ultimately, what I've learned over the past years is I'm the one who has every power. Like, it's no one else's responsibility. It's my own responsibility, and not allowing excuses in my life. And that's basically what I've learned.
We're talking with Shelby Fisk, who's a recent graduate of the University of Louisville. You also said you went to Croatia. Didn't you spend like 30 days in one place teaching or doing something?
No.
Or were you just backpacking day to day, going all over Europe?
So we were in Germany for 12 hours. Then we went to Croatia.
That's a pretty short stop in Germany.
Yeah, that was a long travel day. But then we went to Croatia, and we were in Zagreb for 2 days, and then we went to a small town called Sisak. We were there for 5 days, and we taught in a school for the majority of that time.
That's what I was talking about. So you spent 5 days in the school. So did you teach English, or what did you?
So it was a program about healthy relationships. And so it was the communication department as well as the nursing. So we came up with the program talking about healthy relationships, whether that's peer related, whether that is, relationships between like boyfriend and girlfriend, parents relationships, all different aspects. And then the nursing program talked about like safe sex and things that aren't taught in schools over there.
What have you gotten from the University of Louisville that you think has been so important in your life, other than having the student rec center that you go work out at and help you lose some weight? What have you gotten from UofL and the staff and faculty here?
I was thinking about this the other night, actually. I have developed critical thinking skills, and I know that they talked about that my freshman year a lot, and I was like, well, what is that? What does that have to do with anything? But truthfully, like, critical thinking skills, thinking things through, small picture, big picture, and every person that I've come in contact with at UofL, like John, I've worked for him for 5 years, and, developing that relationship, I'm here today because of it. Networking is very important, and along with a communication degree, there's so many different aspects that my freshman year, I had no idea that that's what I wanted to do, but people have helped guide me along, and that's one of the things that I appreciate the most from my experience at UofL.
At UofL. And what do you tell others? What do you tell other students, maybe at Atherton or students in the Louisville area who are trying to figure out where to go to college and maybe ask you about the University of Louisville? What do you tell them?
About my experiences here,
or about why they should consider University of Louisville. If you had to if you were the salesperson for the University of Louisville, what would you tell high school students? When I started with my freshman year, it was not mandatory to live on campus. It was still a commuter school. And the fact that the university has changed so much since my freshman year to now, this is a college campus. This is actually a college campus. This is a college environment. Some people, there's this like negative thing. Well, I've lived in Louisville my whole life. I'm not going to get the college experience. Well, that's absolutely untrue. Like, you get a full college experience here, and I think that's important. And I can still go home to my parents on Sunday night and have dinner with them. Yeah, my son does the same thing. I hardly ever see him, except occasionally on Sundays he'll come home maybe to get the laundry done and get a
Rage refrigerator.
Yep, there you go.
Guilty.
All right. Well, Shelby Fisk, congratulations on graduation from the University of Louisville. Sounds like you got a great life story to tell. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Chris Wrights is the new director of UofL's Hite Art Institute, and we have a chance to meet him now and find out what's going on at the Hite Art Institute, where he came from, and a little bit about Chris. So, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, let's talk about, first of all, you. Let's find out where you're from, how you got to UofL, when you started, all that good stuff.
Sure. So, I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I just wrapped up my PhD from Princeton University. So I was in Jersey, New York City. Prior to that, I was the project manager at Public Art Fund in New York, which is a nonprofit organization, a great organization that puts up sort of monumental sculpture around the boroughs of the city.
Okay. So you found out about the Hite Art Institute. Boy, that's hard to say sometimes. Too many T's in
You
there.
can just say gallery director.
Gallery director?
Yes.
Okay. The gallery director, I will put that down. And how did you get here? I mean,
Well,
how'd you wind up at Louisville?
PhD wrapped up, and I was trying to decide. It's actually tricky. The academic job market, the academic situation can be a little precarious. It's also, as someone who mounts exhibitions, someone who puts on shows, there isn't always an outlet for that in a university setting. Although I love teaching, I love writing. And so this job was advertised as a kind of dual position. So on the one hand, I'm the gallery director, so I put up the exhibitions in town. We've got a great gallery downtown on Main Street, East Main Street, called the Cressman Center. We've got galleries on campus here. I do all the programming for those. But I also teach the graduate program in curatorial studies, meaning I teach master's students how to do what I do. Okay. So I get a little bit of both, and it's kind of a rare opportunity.
Since you kind of walk down the road here, what is the Hite Art Institute? What is it?
Sure. So the Hite Art Institute is in one sense, it's the fine arts program at the University of Louisville. But it's privately endowed, so it's got its own sort of endowment. And as an arts institute, it offers graduate courses both in art history, on that side, and in art production, in studio art, in addition to the kind of three legs of the table of the Hite Art Institute, curatorial studies, which is my program. So all of the normal undergraduate programming you'd have in a department, as well as its own exhibition programming, its own speaker series, that kind of thing.
And for the general public, it's the speaker series and the exhibits and those kinds of things that we're talking about here. And that's kind of what you're handling now, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
So what's happening right now at the Hite as gallery director? What's up now? And there are different places. There's some stuff on the Belknap campus. There's some stuff downtown, as you mentioned. So go through that as well.
That's right. So it's actually a very exciting summer for me. This is my first summer here. I arrived at the end of last summer, and art galleries, we tend to inherit a lot of programming. As you imagine, the schedule is pretty full. So I'm just now starting to roll out exhibitions that I've designed, which is, we're getting to the fun part for me. Mm-hmm. And this summer, we've got two great shows. One is a student curated exhibition. So my kids, my graduate students, spend a whole semester thinking about our permanent collection. We've got a great print collection on campus. We read deeply, just in terms of their interests. They it's in a sense a team-led class, and at the end they put on a show. This is their show. It's on our campus gallery, Schneider Hall Galleries. It's called Summer Breaks, Labor, Leisure, Lust. And
Labor, Leisure, Lust.
It's a little
I don't want to
risque.
ask what the third one is.
We've already gotten letters. It's very exciting.
A little controversy, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It's a great show. I mean, first of all, it highlights our excellent print collection, which is always good. It's kind of good press for the university. But these students are very smart, and they looked at the ways in which print art. So if you think about it, a print is something that you can generate multiple editions of the same image. How that lends itself to circulating images, but also selling images, and how that becomes a particularly appropriate medium to explore conflations of working and playing. So we think of recreation in terms of art making, but also commercial art making. The print medium allows for both. And then they took that and started to explore the subjects of those prints. So depictions of people at work, but those pictures being meant for the nice homes of wealthy folks who decorate over the mantle, kind of thing. And they looked at the model as the female nude was often a kind of trope in art history we're all familiar with, but that model was paid, and that was a gig, and sometimes that was what
the artist shows up at the house and
right. So all of these kinds of conflations of working, playing, etc. So that's one show, and I encourage you all to check that one out. The other one,
and that's at Schneider Hall.
That
is right behind Grawemeyer Hall on the UofL's main campus, Belknap campus. Just
Correct.
For those of you who want to, and it's free, right?
It's
People can
free.
Just walk in and look at this stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
The other one is, as I said, at the Cressman Center downtown, which is 100 East Main Street. Wonderful storefront, gallery
Not
space.
Not too far from the arena. From
Not
the
too far from the arena. No, exactly.
Couple
if you're on your
blocks
way down, just take a few extra minutes and stop in. And this show it's called Sanford Biggers Laocoon. Sanford is a celebrated contemporary artist. He's had shows at Brooklyn Museum, Renaissance Society. He's a huge artist and a big fan of Louisville. He's actually been here a couple of times. We brought one object to the space. This is a kind of an experiment. It is a 10-foot Fat Albert, flat on his stomach. Exactly. Flat on his stomach with an air pump where he sort of deflates and inflates. And I saw this in Miami. And
this
first,
is art.
This is art.
Okay.
At first I laughed. I thought, it's hilarious. Then it becomes really disturbing, actually. You spend a little bit of time in the room with it, and there are all these kind of other valences that float in. Eric Garner, Bill Cosby, all the kind of...
That's true.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it takes a
timing is
minute, though.
everything, right?
It takes a minute, and so you walk in, and it's a big 10-foot thing in a room. It's something to see. And by making it a one-work show, I don't know if you've been to an art museum, you see people spend more time reading wall labels or looking at their phones than they do with the artwork. So it's really easy to kind of zip by it. With one object in the space, you have to look at that one thing. I mean, whether you like it or not, you wasted a day coming down if you don't look at it for a while. And then all of these other kinds of meanings start to sink in. And it's really powerful. We've had a lot of really good conversations. I mean, it's similar reactions. People walk in and say, oh, it's big, inflatable Fat Albert. What's going on here? And then I've had folks say to me, he's wearing the same clothes as the Syrian refugee boy that washed up ashore in Turkey. He's in the same position, like I said, as Eric Garner. There are all of these kinds of layers that aren't necessarily obvious or implied, but that just sort of resonate as you sit there with this breathing sculpture.
That's what people go through when they see it, right? All right, we're talking with Chris Reitz, who's he's the gallery director of the Hite Art Institute at the University of Louisville. What are some of the things that you've found since you've moved to Louisville in terms of the art community? Has anything struck you as good, bad, indifferent about the art community here?
This is a super weird art community in really great ways. This is a great town to buy art in, which I've never experienced before. New York City is a terrible town to buy art in. I mean, I can't afford to buy art in New York. The art community here is incredibly supportive of each other. There are outlets for sort of exchanging ideas, for supporting each other financially, like I said, through purchasing work. It's really great in that respect. The challenge sometimes here is that I often get the sense that Louisville, because it's such a tight-knit art community, doesn't always have permeable borders for work from outside the city or the region.
We're not too welcoming for outsiders.
That's sometimes the sense that I get. Not welcoming, but I'll hear, well, what does this have to do with Louisville? I want to bring in a show. It's like, well, what is that? And it's like, well, this is what's happening in contemporary art. That's what's relevant. So there's sometimes a challenge to make things appropriate, and I think that's good. I think it's important to keep curators sort of honest in that way, because it's very easy to go down a little rabbit hole of your own interests, and that I'm developing programming for a public community. I mean, that's important. But part of my job also is to make kind of advanced, challenging artwork relevant, and that can be where there's a little finessing.
And we're counting on you doing that at
Yes,
UofL.
that's right.
Okay. Chris Reitz, thanks for coming on the show. Glad you're in Louisville, and I hope you have a good time here.
Thank you so much. I've been having a great time.
And you learned something. All right. Stick around for just a second. At the end of every show, we always do a Did You Know segment, which is kind of a thing about UofL, a little piece of trivia or tidbit about UofL. So did you know James Guthrie was the president of UofL during the Civil War era and was also president of the L&N Railroad. And during the war, Guthrie let the U.S. Army use the railroad, which was a vital supply line. And at the same time, he was the UofL president. Go figure. Thank you all for listening, and go Cards.